issues. So you're very, very welcome, and we wish you all the best in the learning. We shall keep on awarding those who keep on sharing with us their items or materials that you produce. We still wait for more, such that the team can actually issue out an invitation for the winners of the day. So thank you, colleagues, and allow me now in just a few to share with us something very, very small here. Okay. All right, just a second. Just okay. 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 Okay, so comrades, just to say that for the teams that are not able to join in online on the webinar, they could still access this conversation on YouTube. So we are already live streaming it, so colleagues can be able to access this conversation on the YouTube. So please feel free to share the link, which Henry has just shared in the chat. Now, colleagues, as the media lead, we know that you'll keep on informing the people on what we've given to you. We are working out on materials that we shall share with you, and you continually share them with the population out there so that you amplify the consumer voices. But also you keep engaging consumers on your TVs, on your radios. But also we want to see the impact of this information reaching out to everybody out there so that we don't leave out anyone. Any consumer. Every consumer must know what is happening. And for today, ladies and gentlemen, now that our minutes we've made it to the 15 minutes almost, I want to introduce today's session. Still, I think that after this session, you should continue informing the people out there, keep amplifying these voices, keep engaging consumers, keep empowering them, and we keep on measuring the impact of how this information reaches out there. Kindly remember that every time we've been talking about standards, we've been talking about, standards for food, standards for services, standards for everything. Almost everything nearly has a particular standard. But what are these standards? What are they? Where do they come from? How are they made? How are they relevant actually to enhancing consumer protection and justice? How do we utilize these standards, to be able to protect consumers, or also to be able to empower consumers with these standards? That is the conversation we're going to have today. And in our midst, our facilitator is already in the house, Mr. Patrick Sechitoleko. He's, I would say, the senior in the standards. He has served in Uganda many years ago, serving at different levels of the UNBS. He served really in different capacities, but most of his work is on standards development, developing standards, enhancing standards, not only in Uganda. In Uganda, he served many years, and then currently he sits at the FAO, developing standards at that level of codex. So he's a senior person when it comes to standards development, standards implementation, etc. He will talk more a little bit about himself, but just know that the person you're talking to for over 30 or so years, he has been developing standards, but also executing the standards in different countries in the continent, etc. So I want to officially welcome Mr. Patrick Sechitoleko. Kindly give him the flowers as he comes on the floor to speak to us. Mr. Patrick Sechitoleko, please, the microphone is yours. Let me stop sharing my screen such that you share your screen, and please share with our media personnel who are here today to listen in and they advance this communication. So please let us give him a round of flowers as he comes on board. You are very, very welcome, Mr. Sechitoleko.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bwambale. Thank you so much, Chimera Henry. And thank you, members of the media fraternity. Do you hear me? Let me first ask one question before I move on.
Yes, we hear you loud and clear.
That's wonderful. Just before I go into the question of sharing the screen, I think I should first share myself in the video.
Oh, yes.
Can see me. My names are Patrick Sechitoleko. I can hear a kind of echo. Is it from my side? Do you hear it also?
No, on our side, we don't hear the echo.
Okay, fine. I will start by introducing myself. Patrick Sechitoleko are my names. Previously, I'm one of the 20 technical officers who were the first, very, very pioneer officers at the Uganda National Bureau of Standards way back in around 1992. I worked in there and became the manager for standards, and we were the team that pioneered the development of standards at that time. Worked in the area of conformity assessment, that is quality assurance and inspection and enforcement, and then international liaison. After that, I went to work with the FAO under the joint FAO-WHO standards, food standards program, where I've been for more than 10 years now. And our work mainly focuses on development of food standards, which are used by governments and the other agencies in general. I would say that I've also been associated with the Consent Consumer Education Trust for a number of years, and that's why I'm excited to be here to share with you the views I have around this subject. Now, I think I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully, I'll get it. Now, where do I find it? Okay, I'll find it in my files, I think.
Yeah.
I can't see it.
Okay.
Possibly Mr. Bwambale could come over here and we see.
Okay, fine. You could just open it. Once you open it, it will be easy for you to quickly share. Just let me come there and see.
Okay. It's already here open. Then from here, where do you share it?
Just go to the main screen. Right there. Then come to this. To bring a window there. So it is here. Just click on it.
This one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Click and then share.
Sure.
And then after that, it's already in slide mode, I think. Just click on this here.
And this one?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay. Here we are. I think for purposes of ensuring the clarity, can I remove my own video and then just make a presentation? If that's acceptable, then we move on. I was requested to make a presentation on experiences in standardization, role of standards in delivering quality goods and services for consumer justice and protection. So that's where I'm going to focus on, and mostly I'm going to look at the food sector, if you can permit me, but I can also be able from time to time talk about other areas that as we proceed. My presentation is going to cover key 3 areas, which are going to look at standards as tools, how requirements translate into quality and safety. Then I'm going to look at consumer justice, why fairness, information, and accountability matter. And then I'll look at the way forward, just try to provide some bit of recommendations. The next slide. Why standards matter for consumer justice? Quality is a slogan, and quality must be specified. measured, and verified. Consumers' health is extremely important. Safe food, safe products, and safe services reduce preventable harm to consumers. If you eat a food today and then in the evening you start having diarrhea or vomiting, then it means that the food is safe. If it is not safe, then it is not food. That's the slogan. There is economic fairness. Part of the work we normally do in the food standards area is to ensure fair food, fair trade in food, and also consumer protection. And how do we ensure that? One of them, consumers should receive the right weight. If you are buying 1 kilo, it should be 1 kilo. If you are buying the quality that you demand, are you looking for fresh meat or are you looking for rotten meat? Are you looking for something that has been dried properly? We should have the identity. If I'm looking for a virgin olive oil, that is different from an oil that has been refined. And you pay value for money. At times you are looking for organic food, food that has not been sprayed with chemicals. Somebody should not claim that this is organic when it is not. That's where standards come into play to assist in protecting consumer. Standards create market confidence. They provide a common language for trust among consumers, businesses, and regulators. For example, I've talked about the virgin oil. Am I looking for refined oil? Am I looking for wholemeal flour if you go to buy the kawunga, the posho, and so forth? Do you want one which has where the exterior has been removed, or do you want one which is whole meal where everything has been ground together? There's when we are looking for drinking water, and there's a difference between drinking water and mineral water. Mineral water is usually got from springs and is bottled at the source. And this morning I was listening to the radio and they were talking about that when people take water from a well, they have better life than the other water which we get from taps. This is exactly what it means. If you're looking for drinking water is got and bottled anywhere, whereas mineral water, if the water is derived from, say, the Nyamwamba River or the spring that are coming from Renzoli or from Mount Elgon, and then bottled there, then that is mineral water. And that's why it is extremely important at times that some of these are protected so that a consumer says, yes, when I'm taking this water from, say, Elgon, CP Falls, I know that I'm taking authentic water from that end. So consumer justice involved one, safe food. It involves the right information. It involves fairness, and there should be redress should there an unfairness situation or unsafe food is got. So that is what I interpret as consumer justice in general from my side. What do we have in terms of standardization in practice? When we talk about standardization in practice, good standards are inclusive. When we are developing standards, we normally have technical committees. And the technical committees are composed of different stakeholders. This is on one side, the government institution like Uganda National Bureau of Standards, or you have Ministry of Health or Ministry of Agriculture developing the standard. They will come in as regulators. We also need laboratories. And laboratories, they provide the science. They've been testing these products and they will tell us, no, this is what we find in place. The industry, which is manufacturing, or those who are producing, say, our maize or cassava flour or milk, they should be part of that. On the other side, we have consumers who take these products and they will tell us that, no, what we are seeing on the market is completely different from what you are trying to put in the document. Or can you put this aspect in the document so that we protect the consumer themselves? Then you have the academia, those who are teaching in the universities or technical institutions. They are teaching at the same time they are doing research. At times we have development partners which could contribute evidence. All these come together to contribute evidence and develop a standard that will take us forward as consumers. When you talk about another aspect, good standards are evidence-based. Requirements as far as food, are grounded on science. We look at the scientific data that is available. Was it last year when I saw some information in the newspaper was it concerning rice or yams or whatever in Uganda, where they were saying, no, there are very high levels of lead and maybe arsenic in the rice. But then, was that science strong enough to cause for change in the standard itself? There is the risk assessment. The government is responsible for undertaking risk assessment and determines that, okay, if looking at how much rice do you take in the country and say, okay, the levels were very high and the journalists went ahead to publicize all this. But at the same time, the government will ask you, how much rice do we consume per day? Versus say matoke, posho, or potatoes, and all the rest of foods. And then you can say, okay, they may not be when they look at the quantities consumed per capita consumption. Then you come up with exposure assessment and say, no, the exposure rates, despite the high levels in there, the exposure rates are very low as compared, say, to countries like, say, the Asian countries, talk about Pakistan, India, and where rice is the main staple in there. When you look at evidence-based, you're talking about test methods. Which kind of methods are we using? Are they methods that have been validated internationally? Or are they methods that are locally produced and so forth to give us enough science to say, okay, we can condemn this? Then good standards remain a living document. Standards are reviewed regularly to ensure that they take into account the latest technology, information, and hazards that have been identified. The standards which were developed way back in 1992, I remember my first day of reporting at UNBS is the day when the first technical committee on food and agriculture was held. That was 7th of May, 1992. And by then we are looking at those standards. Are they still valid after 30 years or more? So that's how standards, these are the main principles you consider when you're looking at good standardization practices. One, as consumers, maybe as journalists or as civil society, we should be part of the process. But at the same time, we ask ourselves, who else should be there? So you come on the table. Don't remain outside. Otherwise, you'll end up in the menu, as the president of Kenya one time told us. So we have developing standards, and what does the standard entail? When we are developing a standard, we define the scope, what product and service is covered. And whenever you go to ask a standard at UNBSS, you should know the scope, that this one is covering maize, or this one is covering rice, husked or unhusked, or whatever. The standard itself should contain the safety limits if we talk about contaminants. We have the challenge of, for example, in cassava or in groundnuts, the level of mycotoxins in there, which are caused by molds and yeasts. Those should be defined so that the consumer is protected, what the maximum is expected of there. The residues of pesticides. If you are going to add their additives are added there for technological reason. You can add a color to a given juice to give it the required color, but you cannot add the color to milk because milk is expected to be white, unless you have a yogurt which you have added a fruit and then you need to add the given colors. But those colors should have been evaluated scientifically to ensure that they are safe for human consumption. You have under safety limits, we talk about hygiene and microbiological criteria. So, okay, fine. If I went to the market outside there and I'm sampling, say, milk, do I expect to find there what we call salmonella that causes diseases, that causes typhoid, and so forth? And if it is to be there, what is the maximum one would expect? Then we set the quality parameters. How much moisture should be there? How much of this should be damaged? You find that at times people are selling maize that is broken together with one which is not broken, and they say it has a whole maize or whatever. all these challenges you're seeing on the market, you're looking at the beans, the one color, and those are mixed color. Declare that this is mixed color and this is a single source beans, so that the buyer knows exactly if I'm looking for which kind of beans. Am I looking for Kanyebwa? Am I looking for the yellow ones, and so forth? Because once the consumer knows exactly what knows and said, okay, I need these yellow ones because they cook faster, or for me, they give me the best testing and so forth. Then we'll talk about identity, grading, packaging, and shelf life. What is the shelf life? How many months do I expect this product to have been on the market? We'll talk about the shelf life a bit later. We define sampling. If you went to a shop and so many, how many samples should you take? Or if you're into a warehouse, and how should you do the sampling itself? There is one which is systematic and say, okay, every after 10 bags, I will choose one. And then, I will choose each and every bag. Some of these are not practically possible, but the technical people know better. And then the national standard should align appropriately with the international standard developed by the Codex Alimentarius Commission, which I work for. Then we have the East African community, you do the harmonization. We have the International Organization for Standardization. There are those which are from the Africa Regional Standard and so forth. As much as possible, we tend to harmonize. So as I told you, a practical example, maize flour standard can address the question of quality. It also adds on the aspects of fortification, adding their nutrients. It should address the questions of contaminants, especially we don't want children in school to feed on maize containing aflatoxins or these groundnuts. At the end of the day, we are crying about liver cancer. The cancer levels are high in this country. Do we know the causes? That's where now the journalists could also have come in to advocate for ensure that standards themselves really cover those aspects that affect the consumers. The packaging. What kind of packaging do you expect to have? They should protect the product and the nutritional values in there. The packaging should not allow for contamination of the product itself. Then there is the labeling and the methods of analysis, as we've talked about. In terms of justice, consumers should receive a product that is safe, correctly described, and comparable across the producers. If you're talking about beans, say single color, yellow or mixed color, if they are packaged properly and you can't see inside. And all these become a bit complex as now technology grows. Possibly we'll also talk about that, especially when it comes about reading labels using your own mobile phone in there. We could talk about that a bit later. Next, experience. Oh, my system doesn't seem to be working. Okay. Experience number 2 is conformity assessment and certification. We should note that trust is built when claims are independently verified. When you talk about how do we verify standard that you have achieved the requirements of the standard that have been involved by a country or not, if not that, there are also associations that have got standards. How do they do that? One of these is inspection. You inspect the premises, you look at the process. We all normally talk there about the hygiene and documentation. You should have documents to demonstrate that, yes, you are doing what you are saying. It's like if you are paying taxes, you should have demonstration that I paid taxes either through mobile money or I paid through the bank, and here are the records in there. But when they come for inspection, they will look generally at the premises. We look at the controls which you have in place. You've just bought something and then you brought in your raw materials. Did you do any controls on them? We look at the hygiene of the environment, the workers themselves, the environment, how do you do the cleaning, and how do you assure that the consumer is going to receive a safe food? When I eat it, same. The testing. When you test the samples, how do they compare with the limits that we have set out in the standards there and the methods that were described? And then the certification that you receive the marks, which we normally talk about. I think Uganda has got a 2 mark. Kenya has a KEBS mark and so forth. Recently, I saw even the African Regional Standards Organization also coming up with road mark. Those marks should demonstrate the confidence that, yes, an independent third party has checked the system, has checked the product, and it meets the requirement. In the case of Uganda, it is usually UNBS in there. But this does not stop, say, a third party, say, if you are, for example, we had the National Organic Movement, GAM of Uganda. They also used to provide their own certification to demonstrate that this farmer has produced the matoke you are going to buy, or these fresh fruits and vegetables you are buying from in a way that assures you that it's organic, doesn't contain excessive pesticides in there. And then when you look at conformity assessment and certification, in case we find an industry or any business operator finds a mistake or what we call non-conformities, they should have a mechanism in place to ensure that those non-conformities are fixed and followed up. There should be a recall system that, yes, you take responsibility that, yes, I marketed this, let's say, sorry, I can use a simplistic example, say, let's say milk. I'm a processor of milk, and on such and such a day, we found that it was not properly pasteurized. We recall it back. Because once the milk is pasteurized or ultra-heated, you can directly take it without further heating, that all the microorganisms in there have been killed. So if we found that one sample, one batch didn't meet the requirements because the power went off or this, they should take responsibility to recall it. And that's the confidence that is required by the regulator themselves and the consumer themselves in there. Whenever you see a product recall, it means that. The other experience that I have when you look at market surveillance and enforcement, that's another aspect that's related to standards implementation. Standards normally help the regulators act before harm is spread. Whenever you have a harm, before it is spread. Of recent, I'll move to the health sector, though I don't know much about it then, but we've been having the question of, say, Ebola. Immediately they put in place measures. The same to the foodborne outbreaks. Measures are normally put in place. For example, when the president gave a directive on ensuring that only unshelled groundnut should be brought on the market or whatever, the whole thing is to protect the consumers. Quite often we go to the markets in there, you buy already ground nuts because they have been milled, but we don't know what exactly is in there. The concern are the high levels of mycotoxins in there. And mycotoxins, as we eat and we enjoy, these are, whenever you go to the market and you see groundnuts contain some bit of that blackish hair on them, don't simply buy. That's what we should tell the consumers. They should be able to see, how do I, if you are going to have your groundnuts milled, buy those which are whole, let them be sorted when you are present, and let it be put in the machine when you are seeing, and it is milled for home use. Don't buy those which are already milled. It contains a lot of things which can be dangerous to that. So when you're doing surveillance, you expect samples to be products to be sampled from the markets, factories, imports, or based on complaint. Then laboratories analysis is undertaken to check for safety and quality requirements, and then a decision is given, either corrective action is given or suspension when you hear shops have been closed or factories have been closed and so forth. That is part of the decision making. One of it is the recall. The factory can undertake and say, okay, we are going to go around the whole country and recall the products and have them destroyed. Or when you hear prosecution in there. And then the last aspect that is expected within all this formula is to inform the consumer, because we are producing for the consumer. We're not producing to enjoy production. No, we do produce for the consumer. So in real world, yes, we come across underweight products. Of recent, I saw a famous a video on social media about cement. We talk about expired products. Some of them are mislabeled. we have a question, a challenge of adulteration that goes on so much in the market and unsafe products. And the standards can help us to be able to address this. They give objective criteria for action. Fair enforcement protects compliant business as well as consumers, and complaints become evidence for improving standards and surveillance. So we have to encourage the consumers to always complain. Please always complain. Yesterday I went to a clinic, and then one of the first things which I was a bit disturbed is that here you are going to see a doctor, you are given seat there. A clinic looks a bit high class, but inside they are busy painting. The whole place is smelling of paint. I simply told the doctor that what you are doing is wrong. If I collapsed here, what would you do? You're having many patients inside, you can't even open. Close the clinic and first paint. This is where whatever. We have the right to complain. Let's encourage our people to complain. Because in some instances, we're told, oh yeah, you know, you have a wiseacre. Yes, it is my right. I'm in my lane. Let the others keep in their lane. Otherwise, if I collapsed yesterday, the little 30,000 I was going to spend for simple checks, then you can escalate to 1 million shillings. So let us learn to complain about this. Let's learn to write about them, or let's learn to engage and network around some of these challenges. Then another real life example that we may normally encounter in food is food labeling. Labels are usually the first line of consumer information. Let us be even in textile, construction materials. A label is extremely important. You're going to buy, say, a dress or a shirt. The first thing is you look at the size. After looking at the size, then you look at the composition. Is it cotton? Is it a mix of these? And then finally, how am I going to wash it? You don't want to buy a clothes and then you wash it one day using wrong conditions, and then you go and buy another one. This is part of that. What standards require, especially food standards? We are looking for the product name. Is it milk? What ingredients do you expect there? The net content. Is it 200 grams, 500 grams, 500 meals? The date marking. At times we have the date of production, the expiry date, best before date. All these mean different things when you look at the standards for food. The best before, one of them refers to the situation whereby once I've told you that is best by or better used by the such and such a date. But beyond that date, the product may be harmful. Here's where the dates closely indicate that when you have a product, even if the date has expired, you can continue using it. Those terminologies need to be explained to everybody so that everyone knows, but they are not well understood and they have not been explained to the consumers. We need to identify the batch. This is the fact when we have a problem that we can easily recall. The manufacturer's details. One time I will not mention the name, I think I bought some maize flour. I reached home and I find the product was different. I called the number. Good enough, they sent somebody, and I have a picture when they were handing it over to me at my gate. Somebody came on a border. This is what we have, the manufacturer's details and those lines where I can call in case of a complaint. And this is what we should encourage all manufacturers to do. If you have a complaint, I should take responsibility voluntarily instead of having, say, UNBS or police coming after me. It is extremely important. Storage instructions. You find that in some products, there are no storage instructions. You find maize flour being put on the ground. Instead of being stored on a pallet, by the time you get it, then there's a problem. You find it when somebody has opened the bag and is measuring, instead of after opening the bag and you measure out, you close the bag, they leave it open. Some of these products expire immediately or after some time when they're exposed to the ambient condition. And even relevant warnings, especially when you come to relevant warnings, when we have currently we have allergens, those foods which you eat and you get undesired health conditions. There are those who eat ground nuts and they have problems. Others don't take milk. Others don't take, say, particular kind of proteins. These warnings should be there that it may contain groundnuts, especially if it has been processed in a line that handles also groundnuts. So that somebody, by mistake, groundnuts may have remained in the process and then they come in there. If you've added sugar, put it there. Some people may be suffering from diabetes and they've been told don't take sugar in there. If you've used a sweetener or some chemicals in there, they should be informed to consumers. For example, sulfites, which are normally added in juices, some people are allergic to it. They need to know that. So, at the end of the day, in terms of consumer justice, consumers should be able to compare products, avoid unsuitable ingredients, trace products during recalls, and hold suppliers to accountable. We need to empower consumers to get the suppliers to be accountable. And also we need to get the suppliers to say, okay, fine, I take full responsibility. I'm replacing this kind of product. This is what the kind of information we need to send out there so that suppliers do voluntary obligations. So when you look at the food label, it should have product name, you should have the ingredient list. If there are potential allergens, there should be some allergen labeling or warnings in there. Net weight is required. The batch number, expiry best before or use by date, and manufacturer's name, plus instructions for use. All these become extremely important because in most instances we don't know, and at times we fear to ask, but let consumers not be shy. If there's a new product that is coming on the market, they should be able to ask, how am I going to use it? It's my money, it's not your money. How is it used? Can you demonstrate to me? This becomes extremely important. Then, how do standards support human nutrition? It's another aspect we need to look at. Foods can deliver public health benefits through everyday foods. I do recall that again in the early 90s or mid 90s, we went into the area of iodization of salt, and I was part of that team that was working on that to ensure that we can prevent the question of the thyroid gland enlargement around the neck, the goiter effects, and so forth. That intervention, I think I no longer see many people with goiter in society. That was an intervention by government. So it is through standard that we define that on top of having a salt standard, that you can add the iodine up, say, 100 milligrams per kilo or 10 milligrams per kilo. Another initiative which I was involved in again while working with the Union BS was the question of wheat flour and maize flour fortification. Again, it was the question of improving nutrition because as we eat these foods may not contain enough nutrients we need. Iron, we normally require it so much for the blood. You have zinc, and also the questions of rickets in children and all of that. We need to supplement, do the supplementation. And the easiest way and strategy worldwide is through the question of fortification. While for those who have a bit of money, they go to pharmacies and buy supplements and vitamins and so forth. But others, we look at which is the easiest way to try to address the solution and the most cost effective. So you'll find that our cooking oils contain vitamins, but then when you go to the Chikomando, the wheat flour and maize flour, some of them are fortified with iron, zinc. Folate is very good for blood. And then the B vitamins, which you may find in the oils. These support nutrition sensitive food systems, especially ours. It's extremely sensitive in there. So this is one aspect that we work on in standards when we are doing labeling or when we are finalizing a standard, and then we can use it as an intervention by the state itself. And it's worldwide done. Edible oil, everybody I think now has got to some extent, some vitamin A in their foods. But as we grow, you do realize that as we age, we require a number of these minerals in our bodies to avoid all the pains and all the changes, problems of the sights. People not seeing at night, the night blindness that I can't see. Part of this is the intervention that are used based on science. So standardization linked nutritional policy, industry practice, laboratory verification, and consumer health as much as possible. So as part of the journalism and so forth, this is an area that would be extremely of interest to you. When we start saying, when you go to a community and you look at diseases, the next part you have to ask, but is then there any health intervention through nutrition? Even when I think one time I saw government was proposing to have free meals in schools, school feeding, which I think needs a lot of support. Children don't go to school where there is no food. And I was wondering the situation which I saw under social media when the minister was questioning a school. You just had 100 children, now you have 50. Why? This is whatever. But do we go down to interrogate such questions and so forth? But why, assuming he registered in January when LC1 mobilized, but you come around June, July, and you find a few. What could have been the cause of this? I think this is where we need to do a lot of interrogation. While I do accept that there could be some bit of corruption, but I would also propose that as civil society, as the eye to the society, we also need to interrogate. But what is the cause of this? How can we advocate for these other aspects that are extremely important to society in there, instead of blowing out things out of proportion, that the headmaster had 50 instead of 100? Was it because last year I was talking to one of the schools? They said, no, the day we give out some porridge, everybody's at school. When there's no food, that number drops down. So these are questions we need to interrogate as we look at the government interventions versus what alternatives could be there to keep those numbers in school instead of roaming around the streets. Then another case which we have is the question of aflatoxin and other mycotoxins as contaminants. And I think I saw a case the other day again on social media when the minister visiting a hospital and you saw cassava in a room somewhere being put on the floor. I said, okay, fine, it's not unacceptable, but what is the level of contamination molds growing around that? We normally find it being put in our courtyards on the floor ground. Henry usually tells me that wherever he goes to Eastern Uganda, the very good highways are used as drying grounds in there. The same to maize and so forth. Our maize, when you get it out, all these crops, they still contain high humidity, and that high humidity is the catalyst for growth of yeast and molds. Groundnuts, maize are all susceptible to attack by yeast and molds, and when the yeast and molds feed on this, their excreta leads to what we call mycotoxins. Some of them are mainly aflatoxins, and these are the main culprits in terms of cancer causing in there. And possibly if studies are done, you could as well link directly to the cancer we are seeing now and the people's deaths they take. So in standards, we talked about what they contain. We defined the acceptable limits and sampling and testing approaches. We also have put in place good agricultural practices. For example, how do we reduce mycotoxins in cereals? How do you reduce mycotoxins in nuts? How do you store groundnuts? The same situation when you look even at coffee. We get it and pour it on the ground. It contains high levels of sugars, which are good for yeast and so forth, and high humidity. And then put it in a house so that thieves don't steal it when it is not yet dry. You get it out when it is a bit white with the hairs growing around it. Those are the molds and the yeasts, and they're the ones causing the aflatoxins in those kind of products. And then you don't take your coffee You enjoy it, and then you start getting problems in the throat or in the river, and you say, what is this? So as we look at some of these interventions at the national level, we have to ask ourselves, what do they exactly mean? How do they help reducing the risk? And how do we advocate in risk reduction? For example, the government has had a program of registering farmers. Have we also been at the forefront, also adding in our voice that yes, register them, but at the same time, under this parish model, how do we help them to proper good agricultural practices being put in place? It's not a question of giving 1 million. And then in the budget, you have no money to ensure that, okay, we also have to have a situation whereby the maize cannot be put on the ground, but at least buy one tarpaulin or tunduvali for that matter, for drying this. How do we advocate to have strong laboratories, market surveillance, to ensure that there was a cry for when the question new order, whatever trade order came in place and so forth, but then I've seen things are going back. But in some streets, it's good, or in some towns, in others, it's still the same. But all that means that if I looked and I want to buy a shirt, why should you wake up in the morning, put the shirts on the outside on your display and full of dust? Do I need to go home and buy this, use the same shirt? I should be able to buy it and put it on and then come for a Zoom meeting like this without whatever. But you go, take it home, buy soap, buy water, and then wash it. These are things which we need to talk about. Why trade order is extremely important. Because these are marketing and trade standards that nowhere in the world that the consumer has got to be protected. You're putting the mattresses outside there. And the same mattress, the moment I buy it, none of us goes home and says, I'm going to wash this mattress. It's full of dust. Then you start sneezing at night. This is the whole thing. We're not saying that people should not sell mattresses or should not sell clothes, but put them in an enclosed environment with a view to protect the consumer. You get all your sofa sets and put them in the sun the whole day. I buy it, and within 1 year, it's gone. You want me to go and call somebody, spend another 1 million on this thing? When the children are there asking for school fees, others want to go to hospital, and we suspend our sickness because it was caused. I think this is where we have to raise the voice and talk about issues related to trade order. That yes, they can remain there, but can they put some protectives, some glass to protect this product? You want a display. This is exactly what it is. The situation of trade has changed, but how do we protect the consumers? Who inspects a supermarket at midnight? One time I was moving from Entebbe to home. I arrived at midnight. By the time I passed through somewhere into the Ndachiwatule area, you find a supermarket being open at 1 a.m. Who is buying? How are you going to deal with fraud? How are you going to deal with substandard products? So when we look into the question of food and consumer protection, we need to encourage good farm practices. How best we are registering agricultural chemicals? How best does Ministry of Agriculture put to task those who are importers of these agricultural chemicals to ensure that they go beyond selling those agricultural chemicals to inform the farmers how to use it, educate the farmers how to use this? You use a mask, you need a mask, you need to put on your protective clothing, you need gumboots and so forth to protect yourself. And don't spray after this. How best, if you are a seed seller, do you tell the farmers about the drying and storage after that good maize, or after talking about all these kind of fruits we are having on the market? The sampling, laboratory testing, and collective action, which we talked about. But the question here is to ensure that besides knowing what this is and the problems here, how do we work with authorities to do the advocacy part of that, to ensure that at least there are changes, and these changes are sustainable in nature. We did the trade order, but then you get disappointed with some areas and say, no, but now we are going back. You need to put the entire 10 sofa sets in front of there. They are all full of dust because you want somebody to buy. Do you need to put them outside if I want to buy, or they have to be inside in there? Then the other aspect which you normally find in the field there is the dairy and milk quality, food hygiene, and certification. We need standards to protect both safety and value for money. Safety, we buy the milk from a milk cooler and then you take home to cook. The good thing we are having is that that we are supposed to boil tea, we take it hot. But I remember way back around 1985, we had a guy working for us, working for my father at that time, and he was a drunkard. We told him, you know what, when I look at this other footballer, the guy takes a lot of milk. Why don't you go to the milk cooler and also buy? So one morning he gets a bike and rides and goes and buys and takes it directly. By afternoon, he was nearly dying because the microbiological contamination level is in there. People get the milk, take it on the way, add in bad water, and then because they want to increase. The hygiene, how do we maintain the cold chain and contamination controls? Whenever times we treat an animal, we don't pour away that milk, we just mix it with the other, and then it contains the already veterinary chemicals. What does that mean? We are fighting for the question of antimicrobial resistance. People are resistant, they are given antimicrobials and whatever. But have we thought about that possibilities are coming from meat? They are coming from milk? Or is it that I'm self-medicating? This is issues which needs to be brought on the table and talked about. That yes, we are interested in this. I remember growing up very, very, very young. The inspectors used to have their hydrometers and they could get stop anybody and check and find that, oh, this one, whatever, seems you added water and they would pour it off. When you're buying milk, we are talking about quality. The fats, it's around 3%. We should distinguish the fat milk which has been skimmed, which is less than 3%, usually 2% or whatever. For some of us who are suffering from high blood pressure and so forth, we advise don't take that. So the solid content, this is one way of protecting the consumer. I need to know if it is pasteurized and the fats have been reduced there, that is same skimmed or skimmed milk, the acidity content, the packaging shelf life requirements. Authenticity, prevention of dilution, that's when we talk about the hydrometer. Is all this milk that is sold raw authentic? Or we add in milk, as we see more consumers, then you say, okay, let me add in some more that make more money. Adulteration, misleading and composition claims are part of the challenges. And then when you look at the milk, we talked about traceability, we are talking about batch information, supplier records for rapid response. In case there are problems that happen. You remember the case of mad cow disease that happened around the early 90s, UK meat, that whenever you eat it, that you could also you run mad in there. We really need to know the batch numbering or whatever that are in there so that we know that this is the one which is the cause when we are investigating. So in terms of consumer justice, the consumer paying for your milk that is safe, hygienic, and honestly presented. That's where, as the press, as journalists, that we need to come to the front to do a lot of advocacy around this, collect the adequate information, talk to the regulators, and also talk to the consumers, and then be able to have something that can be able to engage other consumers to understand these issues. One of the biggest challenges that I've been involved in of recently is the question of honey authenticity. People are always, there is a lot of honey adulteration. When you go to Europe, they always market their honey in terms of which region it's coming from, in terms of which plants and flowers and so forth. But there are those who are adding in their syrups to make it, because we have the economic fraud and the unfair competition that comes in. Here, because we don't take a lot of honey, I don't know whether it is a problem. But this gives you an example. The adulterated honey may look acceptable, but fail composition criteria. Because when at times when I get a coffee I buy, I get my honey, I add it, I add their ginger, and then I add their lemon, and then plus some little black pepper, and I take that. But if it's not authentic, and the good thing with honey, because it's collected from flowers, it contains some pollen, and some of this pollen is seen to be anti-allergic in nature because the causes of this cough is really usually allergies. So, because you are taking the honey, it tends to counter the other allergy which you've got because of the cough itself and flu. But then, if it is adulterated, then you buy something and doesn't work for you. What does it mean? Standards define what honey is, its composition, labeling, and accepted test methods, and consumer receive a genuine product and complaint. Producers are not undercut. This same thing happens in products like different kind of oils that we normally take. That if there are some authentic oils, they may make sure that those oils are highly protected. I think we lost it, one thing as a country, when we decided to liberalize our Uganda allergy because it was authentic. It was from a given source and which we could be able to register anywhere. Am I supposed to stop?
No, thanks. It was just, I
Okay.
think, a technical issue.
Okay then.
Let us proceed. We still hear you.
Okay then. Thank you. Thank you very much. So when you look at some authentic oils that we normally take and so forth, you find somebody mixing sunflower in those oils and they bring them to the markets. Are they the ones? How do we protect them? I talked about the warrage, that everything became warrage and so forth, but this was an authentic product that was known for generations and so forth, and which needed even to be protected worldwide, that nobody can produce it somewhere. And by understanding some of these issues, we should be able to advocate together with the producers and the industry to ensure that, yes, the regulators at the government level can understand them in there. Another is the ways and measures, consumer justice, including getting the quantity paid. We've talked about this. If a consumer, you are paying for 1 kilogram of sugar, but you receive 850, the issue is not only quality, but it's fairness. You saw the video which I talked about cement. The calibration and legal metrology standards ensure weighing instruments are accurate and traceable. When we talk about all these, the guy is giving me meat, but how many of us really care about that meat? We should advocate for better mizan. If you went around to take different photographs of the mizans which we have around, and you buy that meat, bring it and weigh it before the public, then it tells you a lot. Part of the advocacy is that the Ministry of Trade should ensure that there are some funds put aside for these butcheries. Per year, when we talk about the policy development model or whatever it is, to enable them transit from those kind of scales to the modern scales in there that they cannot tamper with. But all of them, they tell you, I can't buy the other one because it is 300, 400,000. When I look at my stock, which is also the same amount of money, you're telling me to go and close. But then how should it be when I look at the different kind of scales? And I usually, because I have an option, I also end up in that, buy it when I go in the villages there. So I found this one, but I'm cheated. Consumers pay fair price and business compete on equal terms. That's why under the Weights and Measures Act, they had acceptable kind of weights. That is, the sugar will appear in, say, 1 kilo, half a kilo, 250, and so forth. When you talk about a toilet paper, it should be this number of meters or this or whatever in there. So that there is fairness. Companies and whatever can compete fairly. At the same time, the consumer can find. But you find a lot of scenarios outside there on the market that are extremely difficult to tell whether it is fair or unfair or whatever. What am I buying? So measurement turns consumer protection into dairy market justice. It's the beginning point of that. And this is one part we have to advocate. Not only advocating that they are cheating of us, but also let's listen to their problems and also advocate on how to address their problems. Because all this money comes around, but these are guys who are being told, please establish businesses. And everybody is looking for something to do. But at the same time, his capital is not enough to buy the most sophisticated one. How can government intervene in there without closing them, but to help them acquire this kind of equipment and so forth that are required, so that the consumer gets value for money? The consumer is already suffering for this. You buy the fuel. At least the fuel they try a lot. But when it comes to these small businesses, then it's a challenge. So there are quite a number of services that are provided to ensure that the consumer is protected. One of them we talked about testing services. This should be competent, impartial, and reliable results. This business where I'm seeing people advertising that is doing DNA testing, I wonder whether these are a bit reliable and whether they are registered and who registers those, whatever. What if there's connivance in one side? There has to be inspection services which are inspecting according to national procedures. Decisions are taken and reporting back to the public is part of the accountability. In general, you should have certification services which are governed by transparent rules and confidence in certification marks. And there are digital and consumer services, because digitization has become part of us. Can a consumer dip in Kabale or in Sebei or in Western Nile send a complaint directly online? Complaint handling. There has to be data protection and reliability and service quality in there. The services in relation to protection of consumers are extremely important. I don't want to give you my information on the following day. I get publicized. There has to be confidentiality in whatever we are doing in there. But you just find that all the information is outside there and children are not protected and nobody is protected. And just because consumers are not aware, and then they fall the victims. So consumer awareness is something that we have to ensure that as much as possible, we become aware. At times, it's so difficult. When you go buy something, especially when they tell you, you go to the bank, they give you a lot of conditions and say, sign here. You don't have the time of signing. You are signing for a loan, and then you see it at the end that, oh, I signed wrong things and so forth. Nobody's there to explain you at that. All these need to be brought to the forefront. Part of the challenges, honestly, if I normally go through and I see with most people, is awareness. Many micro and medium scale enterprises and consumers don't fully understand standards, marks, and their rights in there. That is the starting point. If I'm buying an electric cable, what does this mark mean? And if I found that the electric cable doesn't do the work, or the bulb itself, we are buying bulbs and you just use it 1 week and it's gone. You go back to spend money. You can never grow rich. You can never solve your problems if we are spending money on things which should have taken, say, 1 year, and it takes 1 week or 1 month. Then the enforcement pressure. The challenge of counterfeits. I was talking to a friend who had a child who came here to just for holidays. They are busy somewhere studying, and then they came here and started buying all those bags which are fake. I said, oh, I've got all the brand names that I need. No, now I will not be intimidated by colleagues who are rich enough in the university who are buying the real brand. We have the question of counterfeits, the challenge of informed trade. Changing technologies require risk-based surveillance. The technologies are changing a lot. And one of the technologies we are having and currently being discussed at a global level are the new food production systems. That the traditional kind of food systems are coming to the end. They have matured. You don't no longer talk about maize. You no longer talk about sugar. You don't talk about palm oil so much and so forth. But people are coming up and the innovations are coming up. For example, now we have omega-3 oils, which are derived from microorganisms. Normally, omega oils are derived from fish oils. But these are going to come on the market. Are we ready for them? Are the regulators ready for them? And they are going to come as nutritional supplements, and if they are not already there. We have the technology. For example, now there are discussions around the laboratory-grown meats. Japan has moved ahead to produce one of their best meat is called Wagyu beef. And Wagyu beef is produced from given type of cows, fed, whatever, and so forth. So they have imitated, went to the laboratory and grown that same, and they can produce a burger for you. The next step that they are going to is produce the technology. You take it at home, put in your kitchen, incubate it, and in a few hours you have your beef and you eat it. Are we ready when we look at it as journalists? How do we prepare ourselves for that kind of pressure that is likely to happen? And work hand in hand with the legislative authorities and with the consumers, know that, yeah, this challenge is coming ahead of us. The compliance costs are usually very high. There is the testing, upgrading processes, certification can be costly for small businesses. Extremely, extremely, extremely costly. I've ever been in it when we were doing the fish exports around the 1998 up to around 2003, 2004, when we had challenges with the European unions. To get industries upgrade, it took a lot of efforts in there because you didn't plan for it and the costs are enormous. Have we included stakeholders in the initiative? Has the government included those? Consumer voices become important. Journalists, your voices are extremely important. Small producer realities must be presented early as much as possible. How do we advocate this? How do we create confidence in small producers also to come at the front? President Ruto one time told us when we had a meeting in Nairobi for Africa that Africa needs to come at the table. Otherwise, it will be put on the menu. And being put on the menu means once something has been put on the menu and you go to a restaurant and ask for the menu, means that you're ready to be eaten. So this is the same issue that small producer, even if you're a bricklayer, how do you come on the table when they're making standards for bricks, burnt clay bricks? Or if you're making these blocks, how do you get them on the table? How do they get organized into groups so that their voice can be heard? Because these are employment areas, they are livelihoods at stake. Then there's the testing capacity, which is, do we have a national laboratory testing the infrastructure? And this is one of the biggest challenges for developing countries. We had the discussions around the question of aflatoxins, peanuts, and the codes of practice, what are the levels? Because we couldn't get any scientific data from developing country, that work was put aside. But if you are going to trade peanuts between Africa and developed world, you have to demonstrate that, yes, within our conditions, that the maximum amount of this is what we get. This is some of the reasons why they are insisting on having things like coffee to register the producers, to know where it is coming from, such that if there is a product, the problem of coffee coming from Uganda, we can easily trace that this one came from where. This is the zone. The zone can be helped to come up. It's not that, yes, we know that can be misused, but at the same time, I'm trying to look from a standards perspective, not from trade and whatever perspective, that what is the issues behind this in general. Then I talked about data gaps. We don't have enough technical information to that. To be able, you to look at the question of the rice, which somebody said, yes, you did your research, but where did you get the samples? He said, no, I got them in the markets. Did you go down to the villages? Did we look at, they say, this is the season. Can we start from harvesting across? And we look at the value chain and be able to give conclusions that can help a lot the consumers to understand that if you are going to buy, please go ahead and buy this kind of product in there. Then my recommendations, which come in my mind, is that strengthen market surveillance to the regulators if we are going to advocate. Don't tell me that you are doing now new trade order and stops, and you can't say, okay, fine, we have stopped it, we're not going to destroy anything, but those who have moved, they should go permanently move. Don't come back tomorrow. But this inspection should be risk-based. What is the risk? If the product is ready for consumption, for example, if I'm inspecting, say, among the fruits and vegetables, where should I put the highest level of whatever emphasis? Should I put it on the greens, which are spread, and the tomatoes, which are spread directly in the markets? Or should I put it on, say, the pineapples? Because the advantage with the pineapples, you definitely remove the skin and eat what is inside. But the tomatoes, you don't do that. The greens, you don't do that. This is what we call the risk. What is the risk of the consumer being exposed to the levels which are higher than that? And then how do I ensure that the restaurants, these whatever the Toniras and the people who sell in the evening markets, sure that they protect the consumers? So we need interagency collaborations, not only between the government agencies, but equally ourselves as consumer organizations and the journalists to ensure that, yes, we collaborate not only with it, don't choose the producer alone, but you can also talk with the producer to understand their point of view, such that whenever we are reporting, yes, this has happened, an outbreak has happened from here. I remember I was part of the team that was looking at the deaths because of waragi and so forth. And then there was Mama Fina coming on board saying, no, 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 this was not waragi, they were bewitched. And so I said, okay, I cannot, at that time, I could not urge out anything. But at the end of the day, we demonstrated it was a question of methanol being added in and trying to trace exactly where it was in there. So consumers should know what to check for. Look out for quality marks. Consumers should learn how to read labels with respect of the label. We should demand for receipts. This whole business. The other day I was in a garage and then I went to the car. It was a question of air conditioning. The guy starts and says, okay, so he brought in a new part, a filter. He starts and then starts measuring this. At the end of the day, then he said, okay, how much is it? You were charging 250. I said, no way. How much is that filter? And how much is the gas? And said, okay, I added in this machine here. Which, I said, okay, which one did you remove? You didn't show me, but you showed me the other one. Then he brings one from the jacket. I said, okay, this is one I said, but why didn't you show it to me? So this kind of cheating, I said, okay, fine. Would you give me a receipt? But if I gave you a receipt, it will be too more expensive for you. But yes, receipts are not bad. It's one way when you when you want to come back to claim for redress, you should have the receipt. But we still go with this old way that, hey, we know each other. This is a village or shop. They will understand me and so forth. But how do you move? Report unsafe products. We should encourage. We should work, ask standards bodies to enhance public participation in the standard setting process. Even you journalists, whenever I'm going to hold international meetings across, we have our colleagues who are in communication, but they always put questions for you to see that they receive the information. They'll be in there listening in, but they need advanced information that, yes, we've heard you're developing this standard and so forth. What are the issues that you're trying to address in here? Why are you addressing them and so forth? What options are there? At the same time, you also ask the industry and the rest and also get the consumer perspective so that everybody is on board. Industry should also build compliance design in their products, sourcing, production, quality management systems. And then we have development partners to do work related to support laboratories in terms of data systems, training, harmonization programs, and so forth. So we need to make standards visible. Standards should be affordable, testable, and enforceable. Because to me, before even when I come in to implement a standard, the first thing I will have to ask you is can you write down what you consider your good practices? A standard is about good practices. Yes, when I receive a whatever maize, we sort it out. We take. When I said this is how I store it, this is how I mill it, and so forth. That means that by the time I bring a standard before you, you already know, and then we only address the gaps. That's what it should be. One time I had to quarrel with the guys who were drying maize in my whatever in the route that leads to my house. They said me, please, can you just go, let the vehicle go through? I told them, no, I cannot do it. I'm going to leave the vehicle here. this is the food I'm going to eat tomorrow in the restaurant, or I'm going to buy and eat at home. And I'm the one walking into it. I told them, no, I can never do it. It's against my ethics, it's against what I studied, and it's against how I was brought up. The next time I meet them, I just decided to pull the tarpaulin and put it aside and moved on and drove. So we have to insist, even if they say that you have the wisecracker, but you should believe in what you are doing, not only just to say, okay, these are our people and so forth. No, it doesn't help you when you are going to indirectly eat the same food where you stepped and contaminated it, and the following day you are in the hospital, in the ICU, where you are spending 2 million per day. Do you have that money? We have to address these problems ourselves, hand in hand with the regulators, hand in hand with the consumers. Everybody needs to get on board. Possibly the last issue I think I talked about, it is a question which I told you that there are new emerging areas in the world over. We have the question of the IT, AI, and the rest. These days you are buying food online. And how would you tell that this food is okay? We're now coming up with the globally new standards for labeling of pre-packages, which are sold online. There are also aspects that are linked to there's when you have hampers, you've got to find a hamper or kind of different kind of foods packed into one packet and so forth. You have, say, cookies in there, you have chocolate, you have sweets and so forth. Those are the emerging areas and emerging challenges and so forth. How does the consumer know that? We need to study that. Then we have the question that are linked to digitization of electronic certificate. The moment you are exporting a product from here, the certificate should just go automatically online and then somebody gets it. It's like when you are booking an airline and say, just okay, fine, go online and book your air ticket directly, or you're buying. I had the lorries are also coming up with a system where you just buy your tickets online and you move on. These are coming on board as much as possible for the consumers. And this is where we also need to advocate fairness as far as consumer protection is concerned. We talked about the emerging new food sources. One of them I talked about microbiotic omega-3 foods that are coming on. And increasingly, it's for us, when we talk about Wensenene, everybody knows they are white ants. In other countries, they are not known. So for them, they're also calling them new food sources and so forth. But even if Wensenenes are brought and people normally buy them in Europe, but they should be labeled properly. And also, what are the potential to allow to caution people that these are potentially, you can be allergenic to this kind of foods in there. So many things are getting on board. So as consumers and as journalists, we need to open our eyes and say, okay, this product here, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Agriculture, what is your view? Consumers, what is your view? So that they start preparing their minds so that in general, they survive, because at the rate at which the world is changing is too fast. I left the university, I was forced to go to a computer lesson and start learning all these computers. Hardly 2 years later, when I had started working, computers were on our desks and so forth. And now we are moving with AI, trying to cope up and say, hey, is this also AI things and so forth. Before my dad died, that 2017, he was used to call the money for the mobile money as in Uganda, it's Sentezamizimu or money from spirits. How does it come on my phone? When we was used to the old way, go to put it in the bank and then get from there. But now everybody is talking about, okay, send me on mobile money. So you do realize that we have to catch up when it comes to the question of standards and consumer protection. Finally, thank you so much. I would say in my closing message that standards will create confidence, and confidence will build trust. Trust is the foundation of consumer protection and sustainable markets. This is why the message we need to carry across all the value chains that we are talking about. Let it be in electricity, let it be in water, let it be in all other service industries, and also in the food sector. Once we don't do that, then we are bound to fail. Thank you so much for your time. I think I've taken a lot of time in there. I beg to stop here and then listen from your side. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Sechitoleko. This was a very powerful presentation. Colleagues, as usual, we need to give the gentleman his flowers. Thank you so much, colleagues. And thank you so much, Mr. Sechitoleko. This is amazing. There's a lot of work we need to do. There's a lot to reflect on. I don't know where to start from. Quite a lot. And I like the fact that the chat was very, very interesting. I grabbed some questions from the chat, and let me just share them here so that Mr. Sechitoleko could give us some quick responses. Not all of them require answers, but some bit of surprises here and there. One of the comrades is asking, what are the health risks associated with drying maize on tarmac roads? This has been a common in my rural community. Recently, there was a WhatsApp heated debate about one of the streets when my whole district traffic police officer covered half of the road with his maize grain. I mean, that's quite absurd, but we know very well that drying food on tarmac roads would be very, very disastrous to the population, to the people going to eat the food. Of course, there are two things involved. It is a road safety issue, but also it is a food safety issue. Every time there is melting of tar and then it finds food, then certainly the tar will go into the food and we shall end up eating the tar. So these are some of the risks, but I know that Mr. Sechitoleko would have another version of the answers. But that is one interesting question. People from, I think, the east and the west, even those in the north, we see food on the ground. We see food on tarmac roads whenever we are going to those districts. So it is something that is worth discussing. And thank you so much for raising this question. One says that during the course of Mr. Sechitoleko's presentation, one was relating with misleading information on the packaging materials. That sometimes the packs, while there is information provided on the packaging material, but we can relate with misleading information on those packaging materials. Sometimes expiry dates are changed. Even when a product was expiring maybe a week ago, and then someone changes the expiry date. We have seen that happen. How is it dealt with? How are we supposed to deal with it as consumers? These are very interesting areas of concern. There is, sometimes there is important information, say about usage or warnings on some of those products. Yeah, we have seen some of the warnings, but maybe the question is how the consumers interpret them, or whether even as the consumers we actually read the labels. Sometimes we don't read the labels just because maybe the labels are written in highly scientific terms. Think about water, which is packaged or packaged water, and then someone writes there some tiny figures and they say ppm. We don't know what ppm is, so what that means we don't know. So I think sometimes the issue is the product can have the information, but how do we use it? Maybe our consumers told about the warnings that are actually put on the products. I think that is the line of the question. But also maybe it is an emphasis that we don't read the labels because probably we don't understand them. So maybe it is a call again to the industry or to the government. How do we sensitize the communities about these labels? What do these warnings actually mean if they're in the standards? How do we interpret standards? Are standards even taught? Are they given out to the population? Are these standards being read by people? Are the entities like UNBS actually teaching people about particular standards? I think those are points of reflection. They may not necessarily have the answers, but I think there are areas of reflection that colleagues were trying to raise in the chat. One was also relating well that yesterday they entered a newly opened supermarket, but the supermarket was smelling paint. Probably paint was just, it had just been painted, and so the paint was still very raw for a consumer to actually smell it. So how would we address that? It would even be bad if the paint was leaded paint, because that is another problem we are suffering with in the country. That while lead is a heavy metal, but that's what they're using to make paint, something like that. So this colleague was relating to that. I see that within the community there are some local solutions. Recently, we spotted some of the peri-urban farmers in Gulu who think differently, and this colleague has provided a link that we can actually read how the rabbit urine is actually being used as a pesticide or something like that. So we could pick that link in the chat and interact with it. One says, when I was coming for work this morning, I saw a marua making woman spreading her marua dough or substance on the walkway near my home. Wow, interesting. Without even sweeping the path. I used to think that she sweeps, but today I witnessed a calamity. He calls it a calamity. So seeing someone even drying your marua thing on the walkway, and yet in the evening you're going to consume this marua. Some experience up there. Thank you for sharing. Someone says that something about honey in Teso, consumers buy directly from farmers because of the belief that the one in the market is actually mixed with sugar. So thank you for sharing that experience. This is to Mr. Sechitoleko. Someone was saying they're in love with your presentation, and someone else was saying they're enjoying the presentation. It's very educative. Thank you, guys. Thank you. When do I go? Where do I go when the food industry cheats us? Most products are not equal to the measures. So one was wondering if now the food is not adding up. I bought 2 kgs, but on checking, it was just 1.8. So where do I go? Where do I report when such cheating happens? The Consent team, I think also the Fort Portal team, the Mbale team, and the Gulu team, you remember last year how we're doing comparative testing. We requested each one of you to come with food items from the supermarket or from wherever, and then we weighed them. And none of them actually met the actual units. We told people to bring sugar. We've told you guys to eat. In fact, all of you are here, and none of your products was actually weighing up to the recorded weights. So where are we supposed to go? Where are we supposed to report? I think that is something that the consumer is asking out there. Well, I may not go through all the questions, but this was another interesting question, or I don't know that it was a surprise. The truth is that we don't understand standards because they are not taught to consumers. So someone was saying the truth is that we don't understand the standards because they're not taught to us. The radio stations exist, the televisions exist, the print media is there, but we have never, we often not see the standards agency come up to teach us the standards. If they do, then they are using maybe other platforms which may not be reaching to the local consumer. So how are we supposed to help consumers to know and understand the standards? The other colleague says, I think the issue of adulteration of products and underweight should be dealt with seriously by putting in place strong deterrent measures to punish the culprits. I can't agree with you anymore, but I just really agree with the fact that we need a lot of work when it comes to adulteration. We've seen people with milk tankers, but they first stop over a small river, or, and then they put some bit of water within the milk tanks. But also we see them claim to be washing the milk tanks, but then they're washing them from, those small streams. How safe then is that? So I think these are some of the discussions we need to have on our conversation, or on our radios and other platforms that we have. Thank you for stressing the important role of consumers. Mr. Sechitoleko, you are being appreciated for stressing the importance of consumers' awareness and consumer vigilance. We need to be vigilant every now and then. Why do you sit on a boda which is dirty? Why do you go to a room that is dusty? Why do you buy food from a very dirty place? Why don't you read the instructions for use for a product? So consumer awareness and vigilance is very, very important. One also says they're enjoying the presentation. It's very educative. Counterfeits are on the rise in Uganda. And we ask why. Someone has already put up an article where farmers are decrying counterfeit inputs, especially when it comes to fertilizers. I shared with you previously an example of a lady who bought a pesticide, actually a weed killer. She was buying a herbicide. So she went and sprayed all the 10 acres with anticipations that the grass is going to die. Unfortunately, she woke up after 3 days and now the garden had gotten fertility, and so everything was shining afresh. So instead of killing the weeds, it actually brought the weeds. So a lot of counterfeit on our market. Lastly, sometimes I do say UNBS does not do its job for some products. Well, I don't know, but a colleague feels that UNBS is actually not doing enough in terms of checking the quality of the products that are coming to the market. In Mbale, we see omega oils now on the market, especially in the pharmacies, to handle heart-related illnesses. I'm not very sure whether omega-3 fatty acids are supposed to be sold in the pharmacies, or I'm not very sure of that. But that is what is happening in Mbale. Someone is giving us information. Lastly, someone says in Mbale industrial area, they mix rice as they add oil, cooking oil. But what is what is a little bit ashaming is that they use legs. You know, someone is mixing vegetable oil in rice, but using their legs to mix. Well, thank you, colleagues, for all these insightful. Others are comments, others are questions, others are experience sharing. Now, I am going to allow some questions, if any, just in case you have your hand up, apart from these ones which have been asked. Or maybe you want to share an experience with us. Please, in the next few minutes, allow me to give you the platform. You just put up your hand as we have always done, and then we shall pick on your question or your input, and then we shall be able to proceed. So I can see Evelyn's hand is up. Evelyn, come on, and we shall invite Mr. Sechitoleko later on to respond to all of them. Okay, let us have Evelyn. Mr. Chimera, you may be able to allow Evelyn. Let me just double check if I can. She might be facing challenges of being accepted. Okay. Evelyn, are you able to unmute? Okay, I think Evelyn is not able. Let me see. Mr. Chimera, are you able to see the hands so that you just give them, you unmute them from that side?
Yes, let me do that.
Okay. Evelyn's hand is up. Let us begin with Evelyn.
Evelyn, please unmute.
Yes, thank you so much. Mine is in regards to the issues of the slaughterhouses. I wanted some more clarification on the time that is given to allow these animals to rest before they are slaughtered, especially those that have been undergoing treatment. Because I have visited a number of slaughterhouses, and I realized that some of these animals are brought in and slaughtered straight away. And yet, some time back, I read that they needed to stay and watch for like about 2 weeks. So I was wondering, how do we ensure quality and then the standards in the slaughterhouses so that the meat that we are consuming is safe enough for human beings to consume? And then also, away from the slaughterhouses, we have these locally improvised slaughter spaces in our villages. I understand, like the goats, people just pick the goats from within the community and slaughter. Who really is responsible in ensuring that this meat that is being taken out the market is safe for consumption? That is an area that I wanted the moderator to elaborate more. Thank you.
Thank you, Evelyn.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Can we have Clever? Clever, please.
Kasim, you need to, Kasim is Clever, you need to unmute, please.
We already asked her.
Okay. We could pick on another.
Okay, can we go to Christopher?
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Is that Clever?
Hello?
If it's
This
Clever, please
Christopher.
go ahead.
Clever.
Then
It's
Christopher
Clever.
will come after.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad to have learned a lot of things concerning consumer protection via this platform. And hopefully, very many people are being impacted across the country and even globally, mostly depending on how the products being used in the market can be used in a rightful way. But my question is here, how can someone be mostly in local and rural areas, verifying mostly on brewing, these local brewing centers, mostly when they use the ripen bananas. Sometimes they do use fruit that are bare. So how can the consumer
Okay, Clever, we have got the message. It's mainly the way opaque beer or the banana beer is processed, how hygienic it is. That will be interesting. So can we have Christopher, please unmute and speak to
Okay,
us.
thank you very much, the organizers. I just wanted to share with colleagues that Uganda National Bureau of Standards actually has a website that even shows which kind of product is certified, which one is whose certificate is about to expire. And I say this because we've had a chance to reach at their laboratories in, I think, in Kampala, and we are able to really see practically what happens. I had colleagues say that what?
Okay, go ahead, Christopher.
Yes. I had colleagues ask what UNBS does, but as someone who has been there, I really implore them to try. By the way, there are awards that were launched. Those awards, they want to see good stories that are promoting standards and metrology, the measurements. So they are saying that if you can have a good article every year, there will be entries for people to put in their articles. Anything that you find interesting in, or a miss or an investigation in standards and consumer protection, they will be so glad. So I just wanted to share my experience that these awards are there, but also they have a very good portal. If you see a drink as a journalist, you can go to their website and put it there. That is where you will see. You can even be able to tell who has a pending certificate, it's about to expire, which one is still valid, and you can even do these stories of the journey, what someone went through to certify a product. These are some of the stories people can read and get to know that, okay, this is what I need, and probably the process is not too much. So mine was just to share the experience of a resource that is existing. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. And more information is already in the chat. Their WhatsApp link, their social media links, how to lodge a complaint. It's all in the chat. Thank you, Christopher. Now, can we have King Solomon, please? Unmute and speak out.
Hello, can I be heard clearly?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you so much for the topic that we're discussing about today. Mine will be two questions. Specifically, one will be under handling consumer reports and logistics, and then also the resolution and feedback. Concerning the handling consumer reports, I would like to ask what is the step-by-step process that UNBS follows once a consumer submits a report about maybe a substandard product or short weighting of maybe like the ingredients, blah, blah, and all sorts of things concerning a product. And then concerning the resolution, the feedback, and maybe like addressing or redress, once a consumer files a complaint, what is the expected timeline for investigation, and how is feedback communicated either back to the reporter or the general citizens, or maybe through their official handles and everything? And if a reported product causes direct financial loss or a health harm to a consumer, what official mechanisms are in existence for them to address or maybe get maybe like compensation? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, King Solomon. Can we have Basaija? May you please unmute and speak up.
Thank you so much, Tim. Good afternoon. And I would have loved to interest ourselves with one of the reports by the Auditor General. I had shared something in the messages there from 2025, actually, which spoke so well that if you look at 10 products that are made locally from Uganda here, chances are very high that 5 of those ones have not been certified by UNBS. And we have reached an extent where we've had many Ugandans, officials advocating for buy Uganda, build Uganda products. How I wish that we can speak clearly about that, because now we have a lot of gaps where we have the products done by Ugandans, but unfortunately they don't pass through the right processes and they are not scrutinized by UNBS. And that was the Auditor General's report, which said 50% of the products which are done in this country have not had a chance to interact with any stage of UNBS. But the other two, maybe to the team, Consent, and the other partners, is how much you want to engage the journalists. Because beyond knowing, getting this information, there's quite a lot when it comes to reporting. And I'm very sure that even on our part, we still have a lot of gaps. Because when we talk about standards, for me, it is something very deep. The other day, I was having an interaction with someone at Katwe Salt Lake. I said, how do you measure 50 kilograms of salt? Or maybe if someone wants 25 kilograms of salt, usually we're going to use empty sacks to get to tell you that that's a kilogram, or maybe those are 50 or maybe 25 kilograms of salts. So when it comes to engaging the journalists, how far can we go? Because even when it comes to the measurements itself, for example, if you're going to talk about metrology, you're going to talk about maybe weight of a product and stuff like that, I'm very sure there are quite a lot of gaps that even when you go to do a story and you want to ask about the weight of a product, if it's the correct weight, most of the time you're defeated at the entry point where they will tell you it is in the kilograms or maybe it is this particular weight. So how far can we go in engaging journalists to ensure that at least we're equipped with the key basics when it comes to standards? Because I realize from the work that I do as a journalist that one of the elements where the consumers are having a huge challenge is actually the weight of these products. We cannot tell when you talk about kilograms, when you talk about the grams. A consumer has no idea on how big a kilogram is and how many grams are actually in a kilogram. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Like you've just put us to task. If you go back to the records, Ed, and I find you are just getting on board, we are holding one of our 25th Media Leagues. So all this from Media League 1 to what we have today, we are empowering journalists in different subject matters. But one of the things that we are going now to look into, how best can we have a live comparative testing exercise and also bringing the weights and measures standard and act as it has been amended, so that we lead you through, so that you are empowered and you are in position to question the duty bearers, the service providers. So Ed, what I find that is coming out of your presentation, we are going to see how we get a colleague from the Bureau, or how we simplify the Weights and Measures Act, and also come into the labeling standard to make sure there is that compliance. And like Mr. Sechitoliko concluded, trust and confidence is very key. And one of the aspects that delivers that is the labeling of the product. And once what is on the label is what is in the package. Mr. Bambali told you that we have gone around this country doing comparative testing, and we find that there are variances with the products. So all this, we are going to continuously, under this initiative, the Consumer Justice and Protection, we have got another 4 series. But out of this discussion, I have found that I'm appreciating that we need to talk more about standards, and one of the aspects that we need to address is weights and measures. Thank you. Can we have Ismail, please? Can you unmute? And I know Bernard, Mr. Sechitoliko will bring in more issues, and then Bernard and so forth. So thank you very much for the questions and everything. Ismail, please. Kabirizi, the floor is yours. Ismail Kabirizi, please.
Yes. Can I be heard?
Yes, please. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, colleagues. Before this very webinar today, I was engaging someone, and this one is such a complicated man on this very issue, because we're sharing something. When you saw this video of the cement thing, this video that went viral, then we were there arguing, and my concern has now come to be responded to. Assuming what happens if I go, if this man went to a shop and weighed the bag, maybe weigh a bag of cement, only to find out that he does not make the 50 kilograms that he is paying for, and yet he's paying for the full bag of the full price for a bag of cement that they say it weighs 50 kgs. Then the question was, does he pay for a bag of cement?
Ismail, we are losing you.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yeah, may you please quickly speak up before internet interrupts you.
Thank you. Then he was like, does he pay for a bag
to
of
the
cement?
point,
Well,
so that we do not lose you.
Thank you. My point here is, or my concern here was, if I went to a shop, I weigh the bag of cement, doesn't make 50 kgs. Who is implicated? Is it the hardware at a shop attendant? Who handles this case? Whose fate is it anyway? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Solomon, you're coming back the second time. Okay, briefly, may you unmute and get to the point, please. Trina Masiko, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I thought this is also important to add to my questions concerning the whistleblower security and safety. Like, how does UNBS protect the identity and security of whoever, or a consumer, let's say maybe a reporter or industry insider who reports major adulteration or major adulteration syndicates, like maybe those of fake honey, compromised gold coins, maybe for products, among others?
Thank you. Thank you very much. As I call upon my colleagues to address that, as a country, we have got a whistleblowers act, and it takes care of all the aspects. So as journalists, I would pray that you abreast yourselves with it. And in fact, I love the question because once the Whistleblowers Act is well utilized, it will safeguard consumers because many people will be in position to speak up and raise issues that affect the consumers. Most of the people might think of whistleblowing for corruption, whistleblowing for what, but if it is effectively utilized, whistleblowing greatly brings about consumer justice and also protection. It leads to productivity, improving quality of life, and so forth. So with all those said, Mr. Bernard, I'm sorry, I took on the core aspect of moderating the question and answer session, so I would like to hand back to you so that you invite Mr. Sochitoleko to take over, and also you chip in with the different questions. In case of any other, I will chip in at the end. Thank you. Mr. Bernard Bwambale, please.
Thank you, Henry, for taking us through. And colleagues, thank you so much for the questions. We are running out of time. I would like to welcome Mr. Sochitoleko to give us comments or respond to a number of questions. So that then we can proceed with the last bit of the meeting. You're welcome, Mr. Sochitoleko.
First of all, thank you so much for such an engagement discussion and also for highlighting the real challenges on the ground. First of all, the kind of question we are having around, as you said, that I don't have to respond to all of them, but they indicate that there are challenges down on the ground. And they also do indicate that we as consumer organizations, we need to do a bit more. One, there's the question of awareness within the journalists to be able to articulate some of the issues. You talked about the whistleblowers policy. It would mean that you have to take it upon yourself, take some of these requests to those who are doing the whistleblowers policy and so forth, be able to come up with something that will help the journalists or whatever the communities, in the rural communities, to be able to bring these issues out with a view to protect the consumers. That's what I get from that. Equally, when it comes to the issues which are related to UNBS, which I cannot answer for, I'll just note that possibly all the issues, as Mr. Bwambale has put them across, plus whatever the recordings you may have of these interventions, they mean that the consumer organization needs also now to sit down and engage with UNBS to try to find out what is the best possible way to address some of these issues. Because some of them, for example, UNBS may think of having, say, let's go and have an open day for journalists to come over to understand what we do and how certain issues are addressed. They just open the institution to everybody to come and be able to see what is on the ground, or you can have even regional kind of open days from different regions to try to create that level of awareness. Because for sure, all of us quite often we get involved into this kind of program of understanding what is going on, who should I call upon, and if at all I've bought this cement which is underweight, yes, there is the reporting. But there is the other aspect. Is it that the person who has sold me that cement is supposed to compensate me? All these are the questions that they will need to be able to address, and possibly it helps them even put down to some bit of guidelines or whatever that can be sent out to the public to understand their rights as the consumers and so forth, especially in the rural areas. Now I move to the food issues. You talked about our OPEC beer or banana wine and so forth, and how hygienic it is. I look at this as an opportunity for us as a country. This is what I say, that we are losing a lot of our indigenous knowledge and culture. because we just tend to shun away from what we have. It's an opportunity when the president talks about science. How can science be brought down to my grandmother or to my mother or to whatever who is producing this so that they can improve? Because we are producing it from our muemba, that's the sorghum, plus the matoke, and then we either put it underground to ensure that we get enough heat for it to start fermenting. Because we don't have the machines, yes, we start now using our feet and so forth. All this, when the president talks about science, to what extent? Because our people are not sensitized. They believe that science is somewhere in Kampala. But they're the real scientists who are on the ground. They have the technology. They have the knowledge. We grew up taking that Mwenge Bigere. We grew up taking, we call it Ombiso Muganda or whatever Mbisi it can be. People grew up taking the Mulamba and the rest. All this needs to be brought on the table. We need to, when we talk about creating employment and whatever, this is where the whole thing starts. There's nothing new getting these things from China and so forth. No. Everything, because we, during colonialism, we were meant to move away from whatever we had, to try to enjoy that beautiful wine of a priest who is preaching, yes, I'm a Christian and I believe in God. But whenever he could give you that wine and you taste it, you could run away from the Mwenge Bigeri. But there's nothing wrong with Mwenge Bigeri because fermentation, we are using the yeasts themselves. Myself, I'm a brewer, except that I suspended it. I did brewing in the 90s, and I was one of those first exhibitors in the Woma show ground and so forth as a very young person to that. But these things are all possible. You talk about the Marua and so forth. Somebody who is, again, doing the Marua and putting it on the ground. Again, there are two aspects as from me as a scientist. One, he wants to look at inoculation coming, other yeasts. When you have enough yeast culture in there, you will find that it brews very fast. So by putting it on the ground, possibly it's trying, but he's creating more problems. One, there is extensive contamination and unhygienic conditions, especially with chemicals. You never know. These days you are repairing borders everywhere and pouring these oils. These oils contain what we call aromatic compounds, which are carcinogenic or which are cancer-causing in life. So it would be nice for such a person to get a simple chiwempe or whatever carpets, whichever we made from our local materials, either papyrus or palm and so forth, and put your product in there. Or if you have an old iron sheet, put the stuff there to dry, not directly on the ground. We are only taught to wash our hands, but this is the same hygiene that needs to go through the value chain in there. But the reality is that the science in Marua, the science in our local banana wine or baked wine and whatever, in Kwete, whatever brew we are doing, is the same science they use in these breweries. It's only that we have to continue advocating that, please, Makerere University, Mbarara University, Busitema, wherever you are doing that, can you research in this and isolate and give us the kind of yeasts that can be used for Marua? So that when I have my sorghum or millet and it has grown up and so forth, I just mill that, add in this yeast plus other ingredient, and be able to give a product to people. It's the only way of moving away people from these dangerous products, which could be all different types of variety to products that are a bit more safe to the population. For the slaughterhouses, one thing which I didn't talk about is that currently we talk about the question of One Health approach. One Health means that a person who is in agriculture, crop production, a veterinary doctor, and a public health officer work together to address the questions of health. Because the value chain has very many players in there. You are producing meat. But when I'm producing meat or milk, there's an agriculturalist somewhere who is producing the pastures. Okay? If you eat contaminated pasture and so forth, it will end up in meat, it will end up in milk. If we have treated an animal tonight with antibiotics. And then we just go the following day to milk that. The antibiotics are in there. I buy the milk, give it to a baby, and the baby falls sick, and the following day they are given so many injections of whatever. Because of what we call antibiotic resistance, because of failure to be able to use antibiotics, possibly in animals or even on crops in the right way. At times you find them spraying within the market space, and they're spraying. So what are you trying to do? So the question of people in agriculture, animal health, plant health, animal health, and human health, working together to address whatever. Because we don't want to, the world talks about creating not silos, but working hand in hand to be able to address all these given challenges. So on the ground, ultimately, the key advocacy issue there is to see how do we work together to address this. People may not understand it. I don't want to do your work as a vet. I don't want to do your work as a person who's on crop production or whatever. But to be able to have this area, if it is quarantined, say take an example of what we have been having here of Ebola. All of us suffer. How can we address it together? This is the overall approach that is being advocated by both the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations and the World Health Organization, to have a common approach, which is One Health approach to that effect. And then it is also important that, say, the guys who are in the slaughterhouses, at the end of the day, they do understand the real challenges that they're in. Why can't I wait for 1 week and then be able to slaughter that animal? How can they be involved in the inspection of the animals? Such that it is them to do the due diligence and then inform the people who are in either public health or animal health and so forth, not reporting, but is to see that we work together to improve our work. This is one of the key engagement issues that we need to undertake ultimately. Again, the consumer organization has also to play a role in there to say, okay, fine, we want to engage to see to address. This is a challenge that was there. Some of these cannot be solutions for today, but solutions can be found within a year, 2, or whatever. People reflect on them. At the moment, people are dying outside there on their work and they don't know who to talk to. But when you open to talk to them, then they are looking for advocates, and you assist them to do advocacy on that jointly. It's the same to UNBS when it comes to Western measures. This is what people are demonstrating. We don't understand ppm. We don't understand what grams mean, what 1 kilogram mean. Why don't you have something that is, as one is saying 850 grams, another one is saying 1 kilo. Where is the difference? For me, ideally, if I'm to buy, I'll buy one of which is 850. It's bigger than one, but it's a difference thing. The other day I was talking to people who are constructing a building, and then the water coming from the building plus the one coming from washing bay passing through a school. But I told them, have you thought through the implication of all this dirty water coming from a washing bay plus one coming from the building, and then the teacher is teaching under new curriculum and teaching hygiene? Asks a question. Give an example of an hygienic place. The child will say our compound, because that's what it says, dirty water flowing. So this is the same thing, working together, collaborating together with all these people so that everyone knows that they has a role to play. And if we work together hand in hand, we should be able to address some of these issues. Coming back to the question of maize and whatever put on the road and whatever, especially when it comes to these tarmac roads and so forth. First, you are adding dust. That is the starting point. You will have to clean it. It's only that where we have food fraud, somebody said this with dust, and he wants to cheat. Or at the end of the day, they are giving him less money because they don't want to work a bit more. We're a bit lazy. That's what I've seen in our country. The second aspect, if you put the same maize, when it's still a bit dry and whatever, it was a bit wet, it's still attracting molds. And once the moisture attracts more, there was black kind of hair growing on. For them, they're feeding. They enjoy feeding. But what is their excreta? Their excreta is called the aflatoxins. Those aflatoxins, they're the ones which are leading causes of cancer we may have coming from food. The other aspect which you have, the moment you put it on this stomach of ours, which you call colas in Uganda, that colas is, or the tarmac itself, is made from bitumen. Bitumen has got high aromatic, what we call in chemistry, high aromatic compounds. These ones go into the maize and they definitely part of, even if you've avoided mycotoxins, which is aflatoxin generating whatever, you may have this one absorbed into your maize. If you don't get it directly from the food, you will get it directly from the animal feeds and so forth. And then you feed the animal, it goes into the animal, and then you will have it. It is all the whole chain in there. You may not know, because of the assurance of international standards put in place, we have what we call the allowed previous, when they are transporting vegetable oil, say from Malaysia, palm oil, or from Indonesia, and these big companies are bringing it in Uganda for processing. They're transported in tankers, but those tankers are not only for transportation of that oil. Those tankers are used also for transportation of all other kind of compounds. It's like the way you hire a truck. Today is transporting maize, tomorrow is sand, tomorrow it is bringing in, you name it, matoke, and so forth. But here, they are washed. But internationally, there is a list of approved substances that can be used as previous cargo, that if before you put that oil, it's only these are the only substances you should have used to transport this. And there are those which are banned for use in those tankers. And one of them is these aromatic substances, including your bitumen. So you put on the collars there. Even if you bought good oil that was transported in a tank that was well cleaned, and the substances which had been previously transported in there are cleanable, and the tank is clean, what may have been done to protect you as a consumer at that level, okay, by UNBS inspecting and so forth, you are indirectly introducing it now by drying you on the cement. So, I mean, by drying outside on the road. The whole thing is within us. Why don't we have some mats, traditional mats? They are with us. If not that, let us buy these old Igane bags and use this to be able to buy whatever. But this message needs to go out to the people. They need, even if we put a lot of money in parish development models, or Bondabagagawale or whatever, as long as some of these things are not done, all the money we give them will be spent on health. And then you'll go, you're back to square one. They are growing all their maize and so forth. But at the end of the day, they will eat it when it is contaminated. And then you grow all your groundnuts. And then you handle them improperly. Then the money they give you, which you are supposed to pay back, you realize you are spending it on health. And you say, this is a bit impossible. So the responsibility is on us as journalists, as consumers, also to get on board, to be able to explain to people, to work with the local politicians and so forth. At times, they're not going to accept you immediately. It takes a bit of time. But you continue the engagement. Even if you meet him on the border and say, okay, how are you discussion? How far is it gone? And you leave it there. One day he'll come back to you. Believe me or not. They will come back to you and say, how do we work together on this? Don't fear putting concept notes across them, programs and so forth. They will definitely come back to you. So I think that's what I have to say about, but finally, if I tell you standards are not understood, don't take standard to be a very complicated issue. Take it to be a standard is a good practice. Wash your hands before eating. Get plate, clean it. It's like you need to bathe every day, at least once a day. Those are what we call the standards. And then when you go to somebody, what are your standards? What are the good things you are doing? And then you define the gaps which needs to be improved. Those are the standards. But because we develop a document and put it across, because we want everybody to be consistently and speaking the same language and talking about the same product. Thank you so much. That has been my intervention, unless there's anything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Sechitoleko. Very amazing stuff we are learning. And thank you, comrades, for being around. I can see we are 105 of us still on the call, listening in, sharing your perspective in the chat. Maybe to just conclude this, I remember when I was first engaging with the standards, then the facilitator was telling us that standards have been here since creation. That actually God is the one who invented the standards. Think about your body. So the gentleman up there in heaven says, okay, the normal standard body temperature will be 37 degrees. That is a standard. So anything beyond that is out the standard, or anything below that is outside the standard. Think about the heart. Your heart is pumping at a particular rate. If it goes above that rate, then we say, well, it's not meeting the standard. So it is way away from what it's supposed to be. So we really want to thank you, colleagues, and we wish you the very best. Every time you're having these conversations, please endeavor to share with your colleagues out there, share with the communities, and whenever we reach out to the consumers out there, that means we are pushing out the message to our children, our parents, our benefactors, etc. So this message is for all of us, and let us try to live it. Let us try to appreciate it. Let us try to use it such that we are safe as individuals, but also the population that we are actually serving. I am dropping the registration link in the chat right now as Mr. Chimera comes in to give us the closing remarks. Kindly go to the chat, pick the registration link, register as Henry gives us the closing remarks. But before I leave, I want to ask all of us to put our hands together and first give massive flowers to our facilitator. It was really a very powerful message to us. He sacrificed his time to make sure that he shares with us. Can I see the hands? Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for the flowers. Those are your flowers, Mr. Sechitoleko. Please receive them in appreciation for your time and for delivering this message to us. Henry, kindly come and give us closing remarks as all of us.
Thank you so much.
In the chat. Thank you.
Before Henry comes in, just one last word which I forgot to tell members.
Oh, okay, please.
And I always ask everybody, whoever talked about the banana and the marwa and the rest, I always ask people that if you look at standards, even Jesus himself did observe some standards. He decided to turn water into wine. Why? Have you ever asked yourself? You always tell us, boil the water, take boiled water and whatever, because you don't want to fall sick. And it happened that by turning water into wine is self-preserving, and you never take wine and fall sick unless somebody added there something. So in any way, Jesus was a scientist like me, that he realized that there was a need for hygiene to ensure that whoever is going to take, whoever was attending that dinner or whatever, should not fall sick and then run away from Christianity and believing in God. So equally here, it's the same message to inform or whoever is brewing that, okay, to ensure that your brew doesn't cause any sickness, to ensure that you observe the hygiene, the way Jesus decided to turn water into wine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Sechitoleko. Great to always hear from you. So, Henry, kindly come and give us the remarks, the closing remarks, as members sign in the chat. Thank you so much, colleagues, and over from me.
Colleagues, I would like to thank Mr. Patrick Sechitoleko. Thank you, Bernard. Thank the coordinators of all the regions, to thank the consent team and our partners. What a liege we have had today. So rich, so simple, grounded, and empowering. Thank you very much, Mr. Sechitoliko. Colleagues, Mr. Sechitoliko, we've been friends, partners in work, and then personal friendship. We are going to 30 years plus. And recently we were joking today, when you see where the National Bureau of Standards is, Mr. Patrick Sechitoliko was one of the first. When opposite Angenois, it was a warehouse. You would go to the basement and would meet there and discuss consumer issues way back from 1993 to date. So I thought giving you that story and picking up from it is to show consistency, focus, and thinking big for the voiceless, thinking big to make right. I recall, like, when he said, you speak up and people say you have Rugezigezi. Way back in 1993, 1996, 2000, people used to say, you are economic saboteurs. Where do you benefit? There is a time I got so frustrated and I stopped the consumer work. But as I was walking on the street, we used to have talk shows on TV, and a lady said, where have you been? I lost my child and I couldn't see you to guide me. It is when I got out of whatever I was doing to come back to do consumer work way back in 2002. And I told Mr. Sechitoliko, he said, I'll be there and will support you. That is when the Consumer Education Trust started. Mr. Sechitoliko came in, led us, and said it will grow. And indeed, it grew. We have never lost out. We keep on talking. Even if he's in the diaspora, whenever he is going for an international codex committee, he drops me a message. When he's tired and the things are not moving, he drops me a message. I drop him a message, we talk. But I would like to thank him very much when he came in and he told me, I am here. And I said, sir, we are running what is called a consumer justice and protection. Can you come in and give us your experience locally? Give us your experience at the region, because he was part of what they called the XQM when it was starting at the East African level, going continental and then going global where he is today. So we have not lost hope. And to you, the journalists, the journey, if I have told you way back in 1993, we are advocating for consumer justice and protection. We have been labeled many names. We have been interrogated. Today you might be hearing of the basement, but there is a time I spent a weekend, Christmas time, being interrogated at CID as an economic saboteur. But then eventually, all things went to waste, knowing that we are not against any business, but we are there to make better businesses where people are doing correct business to improve the economy, to provide quality goods and services to consumers to get value for money, consumers to be healthy, and consumers not to do repeated purchases. So listening into all the discussions today, I liked the phrase, consumers should complain. Journalists as the ears, the eyes, the voices of society, please go out there and teach the consumers to complain. Teach the consumers, empower the consumers to speak out where they're not getting value for money. Speak out where poor service delivery. Speak out on the truth that is affecting your kinsfolk, what is affecting you. Many of us are falling sick, but some of the things that have been discussed today are issues that are impeding our quality of life. So please, let's speak out. I like the discussion on the composition of food. Please, most of you go to functions and you see your MCs at weddings, may you please tell the consumers, empower the consumers to get to understand and not to mix foods. Some of the food poisoning comes out of the way we mix our plates. Most of you might not know the nuts have got a lot of challenges, and Mr. Sechtoliko raised that. Consumer vigilance. I would like the day as you close this session, go on singing, we must champion consumer vigilance. We, the media, must champion the consumer vigilance, because the 100 of you plus who are on this session, if you are vigilant consumers, then I know 10 of, if you reach out to 10, then they will end up 1,000 vigilant consumers who will turn the unscrupulous, all the substandard, all the unfair business to better business when they speak out. I liked Balikudembe from Mitiana, Single. Mr. Sechtoliko is also from Single. When you raised the issue of artificial insemination, many of us were fallen victims. So, Mr. Balikudembe, thank you for raising that. Use those issues to get the duty bearers. Private sector shouldn't be unscrupulous. Even the duty bearers shouldn't be unscrupulous. When both are unscrupulous, it's the consumer who suffers. The national economy suffers. So when you, the journalists, speak out, you play a role in reviving productivity, production, economic growth of this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, the repeated purchases many of you are experiencing do not enable us to save. They only enrich the unscrupulous, but also they take us to hospital. I like the meme one day that is going around. One hospital bill can wipe out all your savings. I would love that also to tick with you today. As you make consumers vigilant, may you please get to know one hospital bill can wipe away all your savings. I liked what Mr. Sechtoliko shared. Many schools you go to, they are painting while the pupils or students are in class. You go to restaurants, they are serving a meal while on the other side they are painting. You go to health facilities like Mr. Sechtoliko went to. You go to government offices, you go to private sector offices, but even in our homes, when you paint, you do not leave required time for the paint to dry up. Like in vaccination, like in spraying, where cows need to withdraw, like on spraying crops before you harvest them. But even in paint, that is required. Even when you spray your home against pests, there is a required standard time for you to re-enter your home. But most of us, we immediately go in and we touch products, we do not wash our hands, and then we touch our bodies, we touch our eyes, we clean our nose, we lick our fingers. These are things that are endangering our lives. The media, this is why we are engaging you. We do not have billions. We do not have millions and millions to reach out to the 50 million Ugandans. But if we can reach out to you, the 100, the 150, at times you go to 180, 200, and you scale up this voice that you're getting today, it is going to be tremendous. The scalability you're doing is going to empower the 50 million Ugandans, all the consumers in Uganda. So colleagues in the media fraternity, in the Media League family, the role after this presentation is for you to speak out, scale out, question the duty bearers, question the goods and service providers, entice, catalyze the consumers to speak out. With you and with consumers that are speaking out, we can make a better economy, a thriving Uganda, and where consumers are getting quality goods and services, and they are confident with the products that are put on the market. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to thank you very much. Please, let's continue. We are going to have another one, but I liked Edie. We are going to discuss with the Bureau and see if possible our next consumer justice and protection still goes on to standards, and we are looking at weights and measures. Get the act and get the requirements, and we move forward, because I find that that is something very key. When we did comparative testing in Kasese, Gulu, Fort Portal, Mbale, and even in Kampala in Wakiso, most of the people were mesmerized and wondering. It reminds me way back in the 90s when we first did the comparative testing exercise. The journalists who were at that meeting did the live comparative testing exercise, didn't want it, they nearly wanted to leave before it ended to go and file stories. But I have two prominent journalists and prominent officials now. They wrote feature stories. One, if you could go back and you meet Julius Muchunguzi, the spokesperson of the Uganda Independent Electoral Commission. He wrote an article, and also Mr. Kalinaki, after the comparative testing, and he said, the few grams that you are cheated with, he compounded them. Once whatever you're being cheated is enough to pay for your school fees. Whenever you are cheated is enough to buy you a mattress for your child going to school. Then whatever you are cheated in grams is enough to buy a bag of cement. So they simplified those articles for a lay person to understand. I'll conclude with this one. I used to have a daughter by the names of Georgina, and she used to pluck out pages in the book. So what I opted to do is to sign and number each book, each page in the exercise book. By the time I finished marking a dozen, 4 books were missing 1 sheet. 4 books in the dozen. That means 4 pages. Just imagine if there were 1 million dozens, and each of those dozens, 4 books were missing a sheet, which makes 4 pages. In 1 million, how many exercise books were being made by that unscrupulous practice. And that was one of the biggest bookmakers in Uganda, even today. Try it out yourselves on the books that you use to make your notes. Are the pages labeled there of the standard? Because the standard requires on each book, there should be the number of pages. Mr. Patrick talked of toilet paper. There is an exercise we did with him way back before he left the bureau, and a number of toilet rolls were found to be under 200 plies. Because when you read on a toilet paper today, as the standard requires for labeling, most of you might think, how do I go and unroll a roll of toilet paper and start counting plies? But that's your money. So comparative testing is something very key, and we use standards to do that. So that all the discussion we've had today fits in well the role of standards in realizing consumer justice and protection. Consumer justice is all about the value for money, value for your health, getting quality, enabling you to have trust. You are protected against the unscrupulous. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. And till next, our next session in the series, and we are greatly honored. I trust you have all registered and look forward to being with you. Cheers.
Thank you, Henry, for giving us the closing remarks. Colleagues, feel free now to exit. I want to appreciate you so much for all the time you've offered to us. Kindly register such that Melania can avail you with your data. So kindly, if you failed, let me know before we leave the call, because after the call, we shall assume that each one of you has registered. So please don't fail to register. Otherwise, thank you so much. I have not seen any complaints yet, meaning that everybody has been able to successfully register. And we wish you the very best of the week. Asha will get back to you on when we next meet. We shall alert you on your regional groups on our next meeting. So kindly, we catch up again when we organize another series. But of course, we shall keep on receiving your articles and the information that you're sending out there. Asha is consolidating it all. And for those, of course, as usual, those who will be able to have more articles or quality articles or radio shows, Asha is consolidating all that, and you'll be able to receive your awards when the time comes. Thank you so much, comrades, and have a very blessed week ahead. Let us keep the advocacy, let us keep preaching the gospel of consumer protection and justice wherever we are, and we wish you the very best. Someone is asking about the certificates. All the certificates are being signed. Are they already with us? They're just being signed. Of course, they are over 200, so someone is signing all the 200. So, but you'll be able to receive them, please. You shouldn't worry, for safer internet, but also for data protection. All of them are ready, and you'll be able to receive them anytime. All right, see you then, and have a very blessed evening. Mr. Chimeras, if you don't have any complaints of those who have failed to register, maybe in the next 2 minutes, you could be able to close the meeting. Thank you, and have a blessed evening.